Hello, we are Group Eastern Time 2, and this is our 611 Group Behavior Change Project on decreasing excessive media usage while increasing physical activity. First, we're going to start off with introductions. My name is Ashley Africa, and I'm from Northern Virginia.
My name is Terry, and I am from Maryland.
My name is Denise Pena, and I'm from Maryland.
And my name is Kelly Williams, and I'm from the beautiful island of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and I'll take you right into our lit review. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, defines overweight or obesity as weight that is higher than what is considered as healthy for a given height. Body mass index, or BMI, is a person's weight in kilograms divided by the height squared in meters. Is used as a screening tool for determining if an individual is overweight or obese. A BMI which falls between 25 to 30 is considered overweight, and a BMI greater than 30 is considered obese. Ogden, Pryor, and Fleagle, 2015, in their study for the National Center for Health Statistics, reported that 36% adults and 17% youth in the US were obese between 2011 and 2014. Among this population, there was found to be a higher prevalence in women at 38.3% and in non-Hispanic Blacks at 48.1%. They further stated that overweight and obese people are at risk for heart diseases, strokes, some cancers, high blood pressure, diabetes, and high cholesterol. Moreover, they reported that the US spent $147 billion on medical costs in 2008 on persons with obesity, and that the cost of healthcare for someone who is obese is $1,429 more than a person of normal weight. As these starting figures indicate, obesity has become an epidemic in the US. A report by the National Institute of Diabetes and Digestive and Kidney Diseases lists computers, phone, physical inactivity, and other screen time among the factors which contribute to weight gain. And for combating obesity, the CDC proposes regular physical activity, reaching and maintaining a healthy weight, and being aware of your BMI. Due to the serious nature of the obesity epidemic, several studies have been done on the topic and on changing overweight and obese behavior. One such study is the Kaiser Family Foundation 1999 study, which reported the use of media, which included computers, internet, phones, etc., may play a critical role in obesity and the lack of physical activity among adolescents. Additionally, according to Part 2005, the US Entertainment and Media Consumer Survey reports that more time is spent weekly on the internet, where children are able to speak with multiple friends at once. Moreno et al. 2013, in their study about the relationship between internet usage between college students, especially college students' fitness, found an association between high levels of exposure to media, especially the internet, and low vigorous physical activity. They concluded that this may be the case since the planning time and organization necessary for vigorous physical activity may be hampered by the time spent on the internet. With this increase in internet usage, Larwin and Larwin, 2008, successfully used the much coveted screen time as a reinforcer to improve physical activity in an adolescent girl by making her internet usage contingent on increased physical activity. This in turn led to a decrease in internet usage due to what Jason and Bradshaw, 1999, called response competition, which occurred as a result of the increase in exercise time competing with the available internet usage time. In their study, Jason and Bradshaw, 1999, made a child's television viewing contingent on exercising using a stationary bike. Although the target of their study was decreasing television viewing and not on increasing physical activity, an overall increase in physical activity was reported. The focus of the Lawin and Lawin 2008 study was increasing physical activity and testing the possibility of simultaneously reducing internet usage by response competition. Now we'll have Denise sharing our purpose.
Hello, everyone. I will be going over with you guys our purpose of the study and what we focused on. I will share my screen with you shortly. So if we look at over to our purpose, we see our focus was the lifestyle change. We all agreed that we weren't consistent with exercising or engaging in any physical activity per se. So we agreed that the main focus, just like Lauren and Lauren study, was to change the amount of times that we engage in physical activity. For this reason, we decided to increase physical activity. However, just like in the original study, social media was also an issue with us, in where we use it daily on a constant basis and sometimes hours at a time, which we could have been doing it, using it to increase our physical activity. So therefore, our main focus, like stated before, is to increase physical activity and to decrease the amount of social media that we use on a daily basis. For us to develop a plan that would do this, we replicated the Lauren and Lauren intervention, and we walked to increase our physical activity, and we gained social media contingent on our walking behavior. Now, Anika, I will go ahead and pass you over to Anika, who will talk about our methods.
All right. Okay. So the first piece of methods are the participants. The participants were 4 graduate females at Ball State University, aging an age ranges from 26 to 40 years old. 3 of the 4 participants did engage in some level of exercise prior to the study, pretty low levels, just occasionally working out here and there. And then 1 participant had like no levels of exercise at all. But all the participants did engage in some frequent level of social media. Next up is our target behaviors with the definitions. I'm going to share my screen with you all for that. Okay, so our target behaviors are walking and social media. And walking can be defined as starting out in an upright position, moving each leg of the body by alternating the left and right leg in a forward motion for no less than a mile, and gradually increasing the pace within 30 minutes outside. This did not include using of the hands and legs in a forward position. Social media was defined as any use of an electronic device on a social media site or application that is unrelated to work or academics. The next piece is our settings. And the setting for this, so in the original study, the participant, who was a 14-year-old adolescent female, she was required to walk on a treadmill. Not all of the participants in the replication that we decided to do had access to a treadmill, so we decided that we were going to walk outside. So therefore, that setting was walking outside. You could walk in a park, on a trail, in your neighborhood, on the sidewalk, where have you. And then for social media, again, setting was kind of like anywhere that social media could really be completed at your home, at work, library, friend's house, anywhere like that. And so for materials, there were at least 4 main materials that we needed for this study. And the one was your smartphone. You needed the smartphone to download the walking apps that we use. There was 2. We had Map My Walk and Walkmate. Due to the location of one of our participants not being able to have access to the Map My Walk app. But both of the apps allowed us to log our workouts and have the time, the speed, and all the things that we needed for data collection. And then the other app that the smartphone needed to be able to download was a Moment Self-Tracker. And is that right there. We use the Moment Self-Tracker to monitor our social media time. And then we needed our computers to access Microsoft Excel for our graphing, and we needed Google. We needed Google for Google Sheets for our data collection sheets. And we also needed to have access to Google Docs, because that is kind of where, we wrote out our behavioral definitions. It's where we had access to the checklists and to our IO data chart. Next is a weight scale and a measuring tape. These 2 go hand in hand with each other because we needed these 2 materials to calculate our BMI. So next up for data collection methods, we calculated the distance that we walked, so miles walked. We calculated the frequency of the times that we walked during the day. We calculated our BMI, which stands for body mass index, and that is calculated by measuring your height and your weight. And then we also needed to calculate our social media time. Oh, and our speed. And right here, this is our data collection sheet that we use to plug in all that information in Google Sheets. So next up, our method. Our method was a changing criterion design. It was the same method that they utilized in the initial study. And pretty much within a CCD design, you start out with your initial baseline, and then following that, like each intervention phase has like a gradual increase in order to make it into the next phases. It's also important that the target behavior that is being targeted in the study when using a CDC design is a behavior that is already within the person's repertoire. When wanting to make sure that your CDC is effective, you want to make sure that you're paying attention to the length of your the length of your phases, the magnitude of your phases, and the number of phase changes that you have. And in our particular study, we had our baseline, and then we had the 2 criterion intervention phases, which in each of the phases, they did vary in length and in magnitude for that. So for procedures, first in baseline. So baseline data was collected for 5 out of 7 days. Again, we collected the speed that we walked, the distance, our social media time, and we calculated our BMI. During baseline, we had unlimited access to social media, so walking was not contingent on us needing to have access to social media. And again, walking outside, since there really was no contingency in baseline, if you didn't walk at all, okay, if you walked a half a mile or if you walked a mile, so be it. And treatment phase 2, the criterion that was 10 out of 14 days. So that means that 10 days out of 14 needed to be walked and at a minimum of 1 mile. And still, again, the same data was collected as it was in baseline. We calculated the speed, the distance, social media time, and our BMI. However, with the difference between baseline and treatment phase 1 is that social media was contingent on walking. So in treatment phase 1, for the minimum of walking 1 mile, the participant could access social media for 1 hour. And then in this phase, for every additional mile walked, the participant could earn an additional hour. And it should be, I guess, mentioned that the 10 days walk did not have to happen consecutively. They just needed to happen, walking needed to occur 5 days minimum within a 7-day period. Hopefully that makes sense. And then in treatment phase 2, the criterion was 15 out of 21 days. Still needed to calculate the BMI every 3 days. So for this time, the contingency was a minimum of 1.5 miles needed to be walked. And with that, the participant earned 1.5 miles of social media time. And for every additional half mile walked, the participant received an additional half hour of social media time. Again, also in that phase, the 5 days of walking did not have to be consecutive. It just needed to be 5 days within a 7-day period. So to also clarify that, treatment phase 1 was 2 weeks long, and treatment phase 2 was 3 weeks long. And here is our Fidelity checklist information. So for Fidelity, we sent videos of walking behavior to ourselves, which I do have a video to share with you all of that. So we each sent pictures of us engaging in the walking behavior as we defined it. Is that playing? All right. So, oops. Okay, so yeah, so we sent videos of us engaging in the walking behavior, and then we also took screenshots of our either the route that we walked or the physical activity log of the other route. And the screenshots, especially if you sent a log, it needed to show your distance, your time, your speed, your distance, your time, and your speed, and the date needed to be shown for the checklist. Okay, IOA. So for our our IOA, we did total count IOA for miles walked, which is smaller count divided by larger count time 100. And then for social media, we did total count duration, which is smaller duration divided by larger duration times 100. And also, again, with this, we sent each other screenshots of our routes or of our physical activity log, and we needed to send the screenshots of the moment from the Moment app of the time that we engaged in social media. And then we were supposed to use that information from those screenshots to cross-reference it what was in Google Sheets in the data collection sheets, and implement it in our chart right here. Okay, so that concludes my portion of methods. I will pass it on to Ashley for results.
Hi guys, so data was collected by numbers of miles, speed of walking in miles per hour, and BMI during baseline, treatment phase 1, and treatment phase 2. During these phases, we also collected social media usage to help measure and make sure that each participant used the correct amount of time earned per phase. So first, I'm going to go over the results of miles, and I'm going to screen share some graphs for you guys. Okay, so these are graphs of our overall miles walked during baseline and treatment phase 1 and treatment phase 2. So for baseline, each participant did not have to walk 5 out of the 7 days because in the study, the participant did not walk every day. But for phase 1, all 4 participants walked 10 out of the 14 days, and they were able to stay on criterion. Also, all 4 participants walked an average of 1 mile. Now for phase 2, 3 participants, Anika, Ashley, and Denise, walked 15 out of the 21 days, and 1 participant, Kelly, walked 14 out of the 21 days. For the 3 participants, Anika, Ashley, and Denise, they were able to stay on criterion and averaged 1.5 miles a day, whereas Kelly was able to walk above criterion, and she averaged 1.67 miles a day. And next, I will be talking about our overall speed. For this study, speed was not a contingency involved in walking. However, data on speed was collected in miles per hour to monitor and record walking behavior. So if we look at the first graph at the top, Anika for phase 1 averaged a speed of 3.15, and she was able to then in phase 2 increase her average speed to 3.4 miles. Ashley for phase 1 averaged a speed of 3.18, and she was also able to increase her speed in phase 2 by 3.5. Denise for phase 1 averaged a speed of 3.17, and she was a participant who significantly increased her speed and about doubled her average from 3.17 in phase 1 to an average of 6.54 in phase 2. And then Kelly for phase 1 averaged 1.21 miles per day, and for phase 2 averaged 2.69 miles per day. So overall, if you see all our graphs, each participant was able to increase their speed in walking from phase 1 to phase 2. Next, I'm going to go over each participant's BMI measurements taken during each phase. So Anika, Ashley, and Denise's BMI scores decreased overall from baseline to the end of the treatment phase 2, while Kelly's actually increased from baseline to the end of her phase 2. So if we look at the first graph, Anika's score decreased by 0.6, and Ashley's score decreased by 0.9, and these are all from phase 1 to phase 2. Denise's score decreased by 1.75, and Kelly's score actually increased by 1.7. And then the last result that I'm going to show is our daily average of social media usage for baseline data, as well as social media usage time during treatment phase 1 and treatment phase 2. The amount of time under treatment phase 1 and treatment phase 2 reflects the amount that each participant had earned individually based on the amount of miles they walked per phase. So as Anika said, if you walked the appropriate amount for that phase, you earn the appropriate amount. So 1 mile is 1 hour, and then the more you walk, the more you earned. Each participant actually was able to decrease their social media time because we all walked about criterion of what we were supposed to walk, and not many of us walked above that. So this is just an overall average here at the table. So Anika's for phase 1 was 59, for phase 2 was 90 minutes. Ashley's for phase 1 was 60, and then it was 90 minutes for phase 2. Denise's was 26.1, and then 23.42 minutes in phase 2, and Kelly's was 76.6, and then phase 2 is 75 minutes. As you can see, it's definitely a big decrease from our overall baseline, which, this was just free use of how much we used on a daily basis for that week. And next, Denise will conclude with a discussion and the limitations to our study.
Hi guys, I will go over with you our discussion, and let me just share my screen with you guys now. So our entire study that we did, so overall, each participant did increase their physical activity. Compared to our baseline, at everyone increased their pace per face, decrease in BMI, except for one participant. But overall, everyone did a pretty good job in increasing their physical activity and decreasing their social media, as discussed per our results. However, there are some factors that we need to consider and some limitations to our investigation. So, like, for example, 3 out of the 4 participants used the same application for tracking our walk and our speed and etc. However, one didn't. So with that being said, it can be potentially the app that was different can potentially track differently speed and distance, and to also include that one of our participants does live further away from us, does not live in the US. And again, that can also be a factor to how this app can potentially track the speed and the distance for her as she walked. In the original study, they also had coaches that were physically present for the student. They were able to coach her through it, motivate her to keep going, and just physically there. However, in our study, we paired in twos to be each other's coaches and look after one another, make sure that we were taking data correctly, make sure that we were on track and we're doing our walks. However, you know, it's not as it could be not as effective as if the person was physically present. Because sometimes if the person is physically present, they can actually see what you're watching versus sharing screenshots, sharing data sheets, and etc. In addition to that, in the original study, there was treadmills that were being used. However, in our investigation, we had to walk outside in either rain or shine. And in one instance, one of our participants did have to walk outside in the rain, which did conclude her to slow down her pace while walking in the rain. In addition to that as well, an assessment of reinforcement should be taken place in order to determine every individual's social media, let's say, that was used as the reinforcement. So, for example, perhaps if myself, if an assessment was done on me as to how often I use social media and when I would like to use social media, perhaps that can be a motivation for me to increase the walk. As discussed in the results, everyone met criteria to walk and gain the minimum social media. However, none of us really went over the amount of miles walked. One of the participants did, but that was on the last day. And previous to that, missed one day. So social media wasn't gained during that time. And for our generalization purposes, we would definitely take more data to determine whether or not a lifestyle actually occurred or whether we were just meeting criteria to gain the minimums of social media. With this being said, the next investigation will need to look into further of each of these different factors and limitations in order to do a next investigation and generalize the intervention. I'm concluding with this now. As we move on to our references, you can see the references that we used. If you have any further questions, we'll see you guys in our discussion post.